The massive warships of the Galactic Council hung in Earth's orbit like silver daggers against the black canvas of space. Admiral Korthax of the Zalathi Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, all four of his arms clasped behind his elongated spine. His compound eyes reflected the blue marble below, now scarred with the fires of conquest. "The humans have surrendered," his lieutenant reported, antennae twitching with satisfaction. "Their united Earth government has agreed to all terms." Korthax allowed himself a rare smile, his mandibles clicking in approval. After 3 months of devastating orbital bombardment, humanity had finally broken. The prideful species that had dared to refuse membership in the Galactic Council now knelt before its might. "Excellent! Begin the disarmament protocols. I want every human military installation cataloged and destroyed within the cycle." He turned to face the holographic display showing Earth's major cities. Half of them glowed red, indicating significant damage. "And summon their leaders. They will sign the submission accord aboard this ship." The war had been swift and brutal. When humanity first made contact with the Galactic Council 5 years ago, they had been offered the standard bargain: join as a subordinate species, contribute their resources and technology to the collective, and receive protection under Council law. Most species accepted immediately, understanding the futility of resistance against an alliance that spanned half the galaxy. But humans had done something unprecedented. They had said no. The refusal had shocked the Council chambers. No species had ever rejected membership after witnessing the Council's power. The humans claimed they wanted to remain independent, to chart their own course among the stars. They spoke of freedom and self-determination, concepts that the Council viewed as dangerous anarchism. Ambassador Chen had stood before the assembled representatives of 300 worlds and delivered Earth's response with unwavering conviction. "We thank the Galactic Council for its offer," she had said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "But humanity must respectfully decline. We wish to be friends and trading partners, but we will not surrender our sovereignty." The Council's response was inevitable. If Earth would not join willingly, it would be made to submit. The example had to be set. No world could be allowed to exist outside the Council's authority. It would encourage other systems to believe they too could choose independence. The invasion fleet had assembled with frightening efficiency. Ships from the Corvan hegemony, the Thek Consortium, and dozens of other member species formed an armada unlike anything seen in centuries. They jumped into Earth's system expecting minimal resistance. After all, humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel a decade ago. They were infants compared to species that had roamed the stars for millennia. The first phase of the battle had gone exactly as predicted. Earth's defensive fleet, a mere 200 vessels cobbled together with reverse-engineered FTL drives and primitive weapons, shattered like glass against the Council's technological superiority. Human ships exploded in brilliant flashes as plasma beams carved through their hulls. Nuclear missiles detonated harmlessly against advanced shields. Within 6 hours, Earth's space defenses ceased to exist. Then came the bombardment. Kinetic strikes from orbit turned military bases into craters. Energy weapons carved surgical strikes into infrastructure, crippling power grids and communication networks. The Council was careful to avoid complete genocide. They needed humanity functional enough to serve, broken enough to never resist again. General Harrison had watched from an underground bunker as his world burned. The screens showed city after city falling under the relentless assault. The pride of Earth's military, built over centuries of human conflict and cooperation, evaporated in days. "Sir," his aide had whispered, voice cracking, "the President is asking for your recommendation." Harrison had stared at the tactical display, watching red dots multiply across every continent. His forces were scattered, communications failing, ammunition depleted. Traditional military doctrine meant nothing against an enemy that could strike from orbit with impunity. "Tell the president we have no choice," he had said quietly. "We surrender." But even as he spoke those words, Harrison's eyes held something his aide couldn't identify. It wasn't defeat. It was something else, something that would have worried the aliens if they had understood human nature better. Now, 3 days after the surrender, Korthax watched the human delegation approach his flagship in a small, unarmed shuttle. The vessel looked pathetic next to the gleaming Council warships, a reminder of humanity's proper place in the galactic hierarchy. The humans who emerged onto his hangar deck walked with heads bowed. President Williams led the group, her once proud bearing now slouched with defeat. Behind her came generals, admirals, and civilian leaders. They wore formal clothes, now wrinkled and stained from days in bunkers. "Welcome aboard the Supremacy," Korthax intoned, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into English. "You have made the wise choice. The Galactic Council is merciful to those who recognize their place." President Williams raised her eyes to meet his. For a moment, Korthax thought he saw something flicker in those strange human eyes, a flash of something that didn't match her defeated posture. But it vanished quickly, replaced by weary resignation. "We are prepared to sign the submission accord," she said. "Our only request is that you show mercy to our civilian population. They were not responsible for our government's decision to refuse your initial offer." Korthax waved a dismissive arm. "The Council is not cruel. Your people will be integrated as productive members of galactic society. Your resources will be allocated efficiently. Your technology, primitive as it is, will be studied and improved. In time, humanity will thank us for bringing you into the fold." The signing ceremony took place in the Supremacy's Grand Assembly Hall. Representatives from dozens of council species gathered to witness humanity's humiliation. The Thek delegates writhed their tentacles in amusement. The crystalline Vorthon chimed with harmonious satisfaction. This was a historic moment, the last independent species in the known galaxy brought to heel. President Williams took the light stylus and signed her name across the holographic document. The accord's terms were harsh but standard: complete disarmament, resource taxation at 60%, mandatory genetic sampling, restriction of human vessels to sublight speeds unless on council business, and population controls to prevent rapid expansion. "It is done," Korthax announced. "Earth is now a protectorate of the Galactic Council. Your period of integration begins immediately." The human delegation departed without ceremony, their shuttle looking even smaller as it descended back toward their wounded world. Korthax turned to his staff, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Begin Phase 2. I want occupation forces deployed to every major population center. Install governance modules in their communication networks, and start the resource extraction protocols. The Zalathi Empire expects a significant return on this investment." His orders were carried out with typical council efficiency. Drop ships descended like metal rain onto Earth's surface. Alien soldiers marched through streets still littered with debris. Massive extraction vehicles landed near mineral deposits, their automated systems beginning the slow process of stripping Earth's wealth. In New York, a Corvan administrator took control of the damaged United Nations building, setting up the Planetary Governance Office. The towering, six-legged creature looked out over the city through windows cracked by the bombardment. Humans moved in the streets below, clearing rubble, tending to the wounded, going about the grim business of survival. "Curious creatures," the Corvan mused to his assistant. "They seem to accept their fate with remarkable calm." "Perhaps they are more intelligent than we credited," the assistant replied. "They recognize the futility of further resistance." But in the shadows of those same streets, different conversations were taking place. In basements and bunkers, in hidden corners and encrypted channels, humans whispered. They shared strange phrases. "Remember the protocol. The seeds are planted. patience before the storm. Council intelligence dismissed these as the desperate hopes of the defeated, the normal psychological response to conquest. They had seen it before on 100 worlds. First denial, then anger, then bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. Humanity would follow the same pattern. Dr. Sarah Chen, formerly Earth's lead xenobiologist, now worked under Thek's supervision in what had been her laboratory. The gelatinous alien oozed around the equipment, examining her research into Council species biology. "Your work shows promise," the Thek gurgled. "With proper guidance, you could contribute to the Council's understanding of genetic adaptation." "Thank you, Supervisor Glex," Chen replied quietly, her fingers dancing across her workstation. "I live only to serve the Council now." The Thek made a sound its species considered laughter. "See how quickly they learn? Your people will integrate well, Dr. Chen." Chen nodded, never stopping her work. On her screen, complex genetic sequences scrolled past. To the Thek, it looked like standard cataloging of Earth's biodiversity. It didn't notice the subtle patterns hidden in the data, the careful modifications that would have seemed impossible to a species that had never heard of human concepts like Trojan horses or sleeper cells. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Human engineers worked diligently under alien supervision, repairing infrastructure and adapting Earth technology to Council standards. They were model prisoners, eager to please, quick to learn. The Council's psychological profiles noted humanity's remarkable adaptability with approval. In the ruins of Earth's military command, General Harrison met with his surviving staff under the watchful eyes of Corvan guards. They discussed the logistics of decommissioning Earth's remaining weapons, the schedule for dismantling military academies, the retraining of soldiers for civilian roles. Everything by the book, everything according to Council mandate. "The Montana facilities will take 3 weeks to fully clear," Colonel Martinez reported. "The underground portions are more extensive than the surface structures indicate." "Take your time," Harrison replied carefully. "We want to be thorough. The Council demands complete compliance." The Corvan Guard clicked its approval. These humans understood their situation. There would be no futile resistance, no guerrilla warfare, no desperate last stands. Earth had been conquered by civilizations that had forgotten more about war than humanity had ever learned. But the aliens, for all their technology and experience, had made one crucial error. They assumed human surrender meant human defeat. They assumed that a species barely out of its stellar cradle would think and react like every other young race they had subjugated. They had never heard of Sun Tzu or Clausewitz. They didn't understand Masada or Thermopylae. They had no concept of the long game that humans had played against each other for millennia. Most importantly, they didn't know that 3 days before first contact, every human leader had been briefed on a protocol so secret it existed only in memory, passed word of mouth in secured rooms. The Broken Arrow Protocol, the plan for the unthinkable, the response if Earth faced an existential threat from a technologically superior foe. As night fell over the occupied Earth, Council forces settled into their garrison routines. They monitored communications, managed resources, and began the slow work of converting humanity into another productive member species. Their reports to the Council were universally positive. The conquest of Earth would be remembered as one of the cleanest, most efficient subjugations in galactic history. In orbit, Admiral Korthax reviewed the day's reports with satisfaction. Human compliance was at 97%. Resource extraction had begun ahead of schedule. Integration programs were running smoothly. Within a standard galactic year, Earth would be indistinguishable from any other Council world. "Shall we reduce the orbital fleet, Admiral?" his lieutenant asked. "The humans pose no threat. We could redeploy half our ships to the frontier conflicts." Korthax considered. Standard protocol did call for fleet reduction once ground occupation was established. but something nagged at him, some instinct honed by centuries of warfare. Not yet, he decided. Let's observe for another cycle. The humans accepted defeat too readily. I want to be certain they're truly broken. As you wish, Admiral, though I think you worry needlessly. What could they possibly do? We've destroyed their fleet, occupied their cities, control their skies. Even if they harbored resistance thoughts, they have no means to act on them. Korthax didn't respond immediately. He studied Earth through the viewport, watching lightning flash in the storms over the Pacific. Beautiful world. It would make a fine addition to the Council's holdings. You're probably right, Lieutenant. Still, we'll remain vigilant. Something about these humans... He trailed off, unable to articulate the unease that whispered at the edges of his mind. Below, in 1,000 hidden places, humans continued their quiet work. They smiled at their conquerors, learned alien languages, adapted to new rules. They were model subjects of the Galactic Council. And in the deepest black sites, in bunkers the aliens hadn't found because they hadn't known to look, other humans worked on projects that had been set in motion the day humanity learned they weren't alone in the universe. Projects with names like Prometheus, Pandora, and Nemesis. The Galactic Council believed they had won. Earth was theirs. Humanity was broken. They were wrong on all counts. The wrath was coming. It just hadn't descended yet. 6 months passed under Council rule. Earth had transformed into a model protectorate. Its cities rebuilt with alien efficiency, its people seemingly adapted to their new reality. The occupation forces had relaxed into comfortable routines, their initial vigilance replaced by the mundane tasks of administration. Commander Zelk of the Corvin Guard stood on the observation deck of the New Geneva Administrative Complex, watching humans go about their daily lives. The streets below buzzed with activity. Humans working alongside their alien supervisors, children attending integration schools, merchants selling goods in markets overseen by council regulators. Remarkable adaptation, his aide commented, tentacles curling in approval. No significant resistance incidents in 3 months. The humans have accepted their place faster than any species in recent memory. Zelk made a sound of agreement, though something bothered him about the scene below. It was too perfect, too orderly. In his experience, conquered species always produced some malcontents, some desperate fools who couldn't accept the new order. But the humans seemed genuinely content. "Double-check the surveillance feeds from Sector 7, he ordered. I want to see the behavioral analysis from last night. Sir, with respect, we've checked Sector 7 repeatedly. The humans there are engaged in nothing more than agricultural efficiency improvements. They're actually exceeding production quotas." Zelk's compound eyes narrowed. That was another thing. Humans weren't just meeting council expectations, they were surpassing them. Every metric showed a species eager to prove its worth to its new masters. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it made his chitin itch with unease. Deep beneath the Montana mountains, in facilities the council believed destroyed, General Harrison stood before a massive holographic display. The chamber stretched away into darkness, filled with the hum of quantum processors and the quiet movements of technicians. This was Bunker 7, one of 12 facilities scattered across Earth that existed in no database the aliens could access. "Status report," Harrison commanded. Colonel Martinez stepped forward. "Project Prometheus is at 92% completion. The bioweapon packages are stable and reproducing within acceptable parameters. Dr. Chen reports the viral carriers show no detectable signs during incubation." Harrison nodded. When the Council had demanded genetic samples from every human, they hadn't realized they were handing Earth scientists the keys to their own destruction. Every alien who had processed human DNA had unknowingly become a carrier for viruses designed at the molecular level to target specific non-terrestrial biochemistries. The beauty was in the latency. The viruses would remain dormant for exactly 1 year from initial exposure, then activate simultaneously across every infected host. Project Pandora? The infiltration is complete, another officer reported. We have over 3,000 humans in critical positions across Council infrastructure. They've integrated themselves into communication networks, power grids, and defensive systems. The aliens trust them completely. This had been the easiest part. The Council's arrogance had made them predictable. They assumed human eagerness to please was genuine submission. They never questioned why so many humans volunteered for technical positions, never wondered why Earth's brightest minds seemed so eager to understand alien technology. And Nemesis? Martinez smiled grimly. That's where things get interesting, sir. The deep space monitoring stations have detected what we expected. The Council's enemies are mobilizing. Harrison leaned forward, studying the tactical display. During the invasion, Earth's hackers had managed one crucial victory. They'd accessed the Council's Galactic communications network for 17 minutes before being detected. In those 17 minutes, they'd learned something vital. The Galactic Council had enemies, species they'd driven to the galactic rim, civilizations that had resisted absorption and paid the price. But more importantly, they'd stolen something else, the quantum encryption keys for Council military communications. For 6 months, Earth had been broadcasting a simple message to those exile species. The Council is vulnerable. Their fleet is spread thin. The time for vengeance approaches. The Wraith Confederacy has moved 6 battle groups to striking distance of Council border worlds, Martinez continued. The Savage Moons have ended their civil war and unified their fleets. And the Forgotten, sir, we're getting confirmed sightings of Forgotten dreadnoughts powering up after 300 years of dormancy. The Forgotten. Even saying the name sent chills through the bunker. They were the Council's nightmare. The elder species that had ruled the galaxy before the Council's rise. Defeated in a war that had lasted centuries, they'd retreated to dead systems and gone silent. Most believed they'd simply died out. But humans had found them and spoken to them in the only language that mattered, the promise of revenge. Timeline? Harrison asked. 8 days until viral activation. The Pandora assets are positioned and awaiting the go signal. The exile fleets will strike Council border worlds in 10 days, drawing their reserves away from Earth. Harrison turned to face his assembled staff. These were the men and women who had spent years preparing for the worst, while hoping for the best. When first contact came, they'd prayed for peaceful relations. When that failed, they'd activated protocols written by paranoid generals who'd asked the essential question, what if we meet something stronger than us that wants us dead? The answer had been beautiful in its simplicity. You let them win. You let them think they've broken you. You learn everything about them while they learn nothing about you. And then, when they're comfortable and complacent, you remind them that humans didn't conquer their planet by being the strongest or the fastest. They conquered it by being the smartest and the most vicious when cornered. Send the activation codes to all cells, Harrison ordered. Phase 2 begins now. Across Earth, humans received the signal they'd been waiting for. In small groups and hidden gatherings, they spoke the words that had been forbidden for 6 months. Remember who you are. Dr. Chen stood in her laboratory, ostensibly working on a genetic survey for her tech supervisor. The gelatinous alien had grown comfortable with her presence, no longer watching her every move. It didn't notice when she accessed a sealed container hidden behind standard equipment. Inside, thousands of microscopic capsules waited, each containing a modified version of humanity's gift to the galaxy. Supervisor Glex, she called sweetly. I've made a breakthrough in the adaptation sequences. Would you like to review the data? The Thek oozed closer, its form rippling with interest. Show me, Dr. Chen. Your progress has been most satisfactory. Chen activated her workstation, displaying complex genetic models. As the Thek leaned in to examine them, she pressed a hidden switch. The capsules in the container burst, releasing an invisible cloud of engineered pathogens. They were designed to be harmless to humans but deadly to specific alien biochemistries and highly contagious. Fascinating, the Thek gurgled, completely unaware it had just been infected with a virus that would, in 8 days, cause its cellular structure to break down into component atoms. You humans show such promise when properly guided. We aim to please, Chen replied, her smile genuine for the first time in months. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Human workers in alien facilities accidentally spilled chemicals that would corrode specific alloys used in Council technology. Maintenance crews installed components that would cause catastrophic failures when activated. Cooks added special ingredients to alien food supplies that would interact violently with non-terrestrial digestive systems when triggered by a specific electromagnetic pulse. But the true masterpiece was happening in Earth's orbit. Lieutenant Commander Pike floated in the maintenance shaft of Council Defense Platform Alpha, ostensibly repairing a minor power fluctuation. His Zalathi supervisor waited outside, too large to fit in the human-sized maintenance tunnel. A deliberate design flaw the aliens had overlooked, assuming humans would never pose a threat. Pike's fingers worked with practiced precision, installing a device no bigger than his thumb into the platform's central processing unit. It was a work of art, created by humans who had spent decades perfecting cyber warfare against each other. The device would remain dormant until it received a specific quantum signal. Then it would grant Earth complete control over every Council defense platform in orbit. "How's the repair progressing, human?" the Zalathi called. "Almost done, sir," Pike replied cheerfully. "Just recalibrating the power flow. Should have you back to full efficiency in no time." The irony wasn't lost on him. He was indeed going to restore full efficiency, just not for the Council. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, something stirred. The Council's surveys had missed it, hidden as it was beneath miles of rock and crushing pressure. Construction on the facility had begun 30 years ago, when humanity first detected signs of intelligent life among the stars. It was humanity's ultimate insurance policy, a project so black that most Earth governments hadn't known it existed. Project Leviathan, a fleet built in absolute secrecy, using technologies developed in isolation from any system that could be hacked or observed from orbit. The ships were ugly by Council standards, brutal wedges of armor and weapons that looked more like flying fortresses than elegant starcraft. But they were built with one purpose: to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. Captain Rebecca Thompson stood on the bridge of the EAS Vengeance, watching her crew run through final system checks. Around her, 24 other vessels of the Shadow Fleet powered up systems that had been dormant since construction. The ocean above them began to boil from the heat of fusion reactors coming online. "All stations report ready, Captain," her XO announced. "The fleet is prepared for surface breach on your command." Thompson nodded. In 8 days, when the virus is activated and the Council's defenses fell to human control, the Shadow Fleet would rise. The aliens would learn what humanity had known since their earliest days: that the most dangerous enemy is the one you've underestimated. Back in New Geneva, Commander Zelk reviewed the day's reports with growing unease. Everything appeared normal. Too normal. Production quotas met precisely. No disciplinary incidents. Perfect compliance across all sectors. "Sir," his aide ventured, "you seem troubled. The humans are performing excellently. We should be pleased." "That's exactly what troubles me," Zelk replied. "In my 3 centuries of occupation duty, I've never seen a species adapt this perfectly. There are always outliers, always some resistance, even if minor. But the humans," he gestured at the reports, "it's as if they're following a script. Perhaps they're simply more civilized than we assumed. Their submission is genuine." Zelk's mandibles clicked skeptically. He pulled up archived footage from the conquest, studying the human faces during their surrender. There was something in their eyes he'd missed before, something that didn't match their words or posture. "Increase surveillance in all sectors," he ordered. "And I want deep scans of all human facilities. Something isn't right." But it was too late for paranoia to save them. The seeds of destruction had been planted months ago, tended carefully by human hands that smiled and bowed while nurturing revenge. Across the planet, Council forces went about their routines, unaware that they were already dead. The universe just hadn't informed them yet. In the L5 Lagrange point, hidden by stealth technology that bent light and radiation around it, another human secret waited. The Damocles Station, humanity's first and only attempt at building a relativistic kill vehicle. It was crude by Council standards, nothing more than a massive engine attached to an asteroid. But when accelerated to 90% of light speed, even the Council's advanced shields couldn't stop the kinetic energy of 1 billion tons of rock. The station's commander, Admiral Yuki Tanaka, reviewed the targeting calculations for the 100th time. When the signal came, Damocles would fire. Its target, the Galactic Council's capital world, 30 light-years away. The asteroid wouldn't arrive for decades, but when it did, it would crack the planet in half. Humanity might not survive the coming war, but they would ensure the Council remembered them forever. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we're detecting increased Council communication traffic. They may be growing suspicious." "Let them suspect," Tanaka replied coldly. "In 8 days, suspicion won't save them." The countdown had begun. Across Earth and beyond, humans prepared for the moment when they would remind the galaxy of an ancient truth. Never corner a species that evolved as persistence predators, that survived ice ages and plagues, that turned killing into science and war into art. The Council had won the battle. They'd taken Earth, broken its defenses, subjugated its people. They'd done everything right by the standards of civilized warfare. But humans had never been civilized when survival was at stake, and they were about to prove that sometimes winning the battle means losing the war in ways you never imagined possible. In his flagship, Admiral Korthax studied the latest reports from Earth with growing concern. Something was happening, something his instruments couldn't detect, but his instinct screamed was wrong. He'd conquered dozens of worlds, and none had felt like this. "Lieutenant," he said slowly, "prepare contingency plans for immediate withdrawal from Earth space." "Sir." The lieutenant's surprise was evident. "But the humans are pacified. What possible threat could they pose?" Korthax didn't answer immediately. He thought about human history, what little he'd bothered to study. A violent species certainly, but no more so than many others. Yet there was something different about their violence, something that nagged at him. They didn't just defeat their enemies, they destroyed them utterly, and they had a disturbing habit of turning their defeats into victories through sheer bloody-minded determination. "Just prepare the plans," he ordered. "Call it an old soldier's paranoia." But paranoia wouldn't be enough. The die was cast, the trap was set, and in 8 days humanity would remind the Galactic Council why they were the apex predators of their world. The wrath hadn't descended yet, but it was coming. And when it did, the stars themselves would learn to fear the children of Earth. Day 0 arrived with the rising of Earth's sun over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of red that seemed prophetic. In bunkers and hidden facilities across the planet, countdown timers reached 0. The moment had come for humanity to reveal its true face to the galaxy. Admiral Korthax was reviewing morning reports when the first anomaly appeared. A communications officer on the bridge of the Supremacy suddenly clutched at its throat, making wet, strangled sounds. Purple blood frothed from its mouth as its body began to convulse. "Medical team to the bridge," Korthax ordered, but before the words were fully spoken, 2 more crew members collapsed. Then 4, then a dozen. Across the Council fleet, the scene repeated with horrifying synchronization. Aliens of different species fell where they stood, their bodies betraying them in ways specific to their biology. The Thek dissolved into puddles of protoplasm. The Zalathi's exoskeletons cracked and split, leaking cyan fluid. The Corvin's respiratory systems shut down, leaving them suffocating in oxygen-rich air they could no longer process. "Bioweapon," Korthax gasped, recognizing the symptoms even as he felt his own body beginning to fail. "The humans. They poisoned us all." On Earth's surface, the scene was even more catastrophic. Every council member who had processed human genetic samples, eaten human-prepared food, or simply breathed the same air as their human subordinates found themselves dying in agony. The viruses had been perfectly designed, each strain targeting specific alien biochemistries while leaving humans untouched. Dr. Chen stood in her laboratory, watching her Thek supervisor dissolve into component molecules. She felt no satisfaction, only cold necessity. The Thek had been relatively kind to her, as far as conquerors went. But kindness from an enslaver was still enslavement. "I'm sorry," she said to the puddle that had been Supervisor Glex, "but you gave us no choice." In orbit, Lieutenant Commander Pike's device activated. Every Council defense platform suddenly found its targeting systems reversed, weapons that had been aimed at Earth now pointing at Council ships. The platforms opened fire without warning, their powerful energy weapons carving through shields and hulls with mechanical precision. The Supremacy shuddered under multiple impacts. Admiral Korthax, fighting through the poison in his system, managed to reach his command station. "Return fire on the platforms," he ordered. But his weapons officer was already dead, slumped over controls that no longer responded to alien commands. "Sir," his lieutenant gasped, purple foam on his lips. "The platforms aren't responding. We've lost control of all orbital systems." Korthax's compound eyes widened in terrible understanding. The humans hadn't just poisoned them. They'd turned the Council's own weapons against them. Every safeguard, every security measure had been subverted from within. From the depths of Earth's oceans, the Shadow Fleet rose. 25 warships breached the surface in perfect formation, water streaming off hulls designed for one purpose: killing. They were ugly ships by galactic standards, all armor and weapons, but they were human ships, built with human ingenuity and human rage. Captain Thompson stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the Council fleet burn above Earth. "All ships, engage at will. Priority targets are the battleships and carriers. Let none escape." The Shadow Fleet opened fire with weapons the Council had never seen before. Not elegant energy beams or sophisticated plasma cannons, but brutal kinetic weapons that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The rounds punched through shields like paper, their impacts releasing energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. The Council had forgotten that humans had spent their entire history finding new ways to kill each other. When faced with superior technology, they hadn't tried to match it. They'd found ways to bypass it entirely. But the bioweapons and the surprise attack were just the beginning. Across the galaxy, Council worlds began reporting disasters. The exile species, the Wraith Confederacy, the Savage Moons, and most terrifyingly, the Forgotten, struck simultaneously at border worlds stripped of their defenses. The attacks were coordinated with inhuman precision because humans had been feeding the exile species intelligence for months. Every Council fleet movement, every defensive weakness, every vulnerable supply line had been carefully cataloged and transmitted. On the Council capital world of Zentari Prime, Grand Counselor Thex received reports of the disasters with growing horror. A third of the Council fleet was trapped at Earth, dying from bioweapons and fighting their own defense platforms. Border worlds burned under exile attacks, and worse, Internal sabotage was crippling infrastructure across Council space. Human workers, the eager volunteers who had integrated so well into Council society, revealed themselves as saboteurs. Power grids failed. Communication networks collapsed. Transportation systems ground to halt. The humans had spent 6 months learning exactly how Council civilization functioned, and now they were destroying it from within. How? Thex demanded of his advisors. How did we not see this coming? The answer was simple and damning. The Council had grown arrogant over millennia of easy conquests. They had never faced a species that understood total war the way humans did. Every other race had fought conventionally, ship against ship, soldier against soldier. Humans had fought with biology, psychology, and patience. Back at Earth, General Harrison emerged from Bunker 7 for the first time in 6 months. The Montana sky was clear, free of Council ships for the first time since the invasion. He activated his communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. People of Earth, this is General Harrison. Phase 3 is now active. All resistance cells execute your orders. Today, we take back our world. Across the planet, humans who had played the role of slaves for 6 months finally showed their true nature. Council garrisons found themselves under attack from the inside as human workers turned tools into weapons. Maintenance crews who had spent months memorizing alien technology now used that knowledge to destroy it. Cooks who had prepared alien food now served poison. Drivers who had transported alien officials now drove them into ambushes. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The Council forces, already dying from bioweapons, faced a population that had spent 6 months planning their deaths in exquisite detail. Every human had been a spy. Every smile had hidden hatred. Every act of compliance had been reconnaissance for this moment. In New Geneva, Commander Zelk's paranoia had saved him from the initial bioweapon attack. Sealed in an environmental suit, he watched his garrison fall to human uprising. The humans moved with military precision because they were military. Every civilian had been a soldier in disguise, trained and waiting. You planned this from the beginning, he said to the human forces surrounding him. The surrender was fake. Colonel Martinez stepped forward, no longer hiding his military bearing. The surrender was tactical. We knew we couldn't beat you in a straight fight, so we didn't fight straight. This violates every law of civilized warfare, Zelk protested. Martinez laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Civilized? You bombed our cities from orbit. You enslaved our people. You tried to steal our world. There's nothing civilized about any of this. Zelk raised his weapon, but human soldiers cut him down before he could fire. As he died, his last thought was a warning that would never be delivered. Never leave a human alive if you mean to be their enemy. They don't forgive, and they don't forget. In space, the destruction of the Council fleet continued. Admiral Korthax, one of the few senior officers still alive thanks to his species' redundant biology, tried desperately to organize a retreat. But the human hackers had done their work too well. Navigation systems failed. Communication channels filled with static. Ships collided with each other in the chaos. Sir, his dying lieutenant wheezed, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the humans. Korthax activated the channel. President Williams appeared on the screen, but she was transformed. Gone was the defeated woman who had signed the submission accord. In her place stood a warrior, eyes hard as steel. Admiral Korthax, she said calmly, I'm calling to accept your surrender. Surrender? Korthax coughed, tasting his own blood. You used bioweapons. You violated every treaty, every convention. You invaded our world. Williams cut him off. You killed millions of our people. You tried to enslave the rest. Did you really think we would forgive that? Did you think we would accept it? The Council will destroy you for this. Even if you defeat this fleet, the full might of the Galactic Council will fall upon Earth. Williams smiled. and it was the cold smile of a predator. What council? Your border worlds are burning. Your capital is in chaos. Your member species are too busy dying from tailored bioweapons to mount any response. And that's just what we did in 6 months. Imagine what we could do with a year, or 10, or 100. The truth hit Korthax like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just planned to defeat the invasion fleet. They'd planned to destroy the entire Galactic Council. Every moment of their apparent submission had been preparation for this total war. But the best part, Williams continued, is what's coming for Zentari Prime. Are you familiar with relativistic kill vehicles, Admiral? We launched one 6 months ago. 1 billion tons of rock accelerated to 90% light speed. Your homeworld has about 30 years before impact. Plenty of time to evacuate, to flee, to spend every moment knowing that death is coming and you can't stop it. You're monsters, Korthax whispered. We're humans, Williams replied. We're the species that survived ice ages and plagues, that turned a hostile planet into our home through sheer determination. We're the children of hunters who would track prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We're the descendants of warriors who salted the earth of their enemies so nothing would ever grow there again. You thought you were conquering primitives. You were declaring war on the only species in known space that weaponized extinction events. The transmission ended. Korthax slumped in his command chair, watching his fleet burn around him. The Supremacy's shields were failing, human kinetic rounds punching deeper into the hull with each impact. He could order his remaining ships to ram Earth to take the humans with them, but what was the point? The bioweapons would ensure few Council species survived anywhere humans had reached. And humans had reached everywhere in the past 6 months, eager volunteers spreading throughout Council space like a virus themselves. The Shadow Fleet showed no mercy. Ship after ship of the Council Armada exploded in nuclear fire. Escape pods were targeted with the same efficiency as battleships. The humans were sending a message written in the blood of their enemies. Earth is not for the taking. Within 4 hours, the greatest invasion fleet the Galactic Council had ever assembled was reduced to radioactive debris orbiting Earth. On the planet below, the last Council forces surrendered or died. The occupation was over. But humanity's wrath had only begun to descend. Across the galaxy, Council worlds fell into chaos. The bioweapons, spread by 6 months of human integration, activated in perfect synchrony. Billions of aliens died in agony, their bodies betraying them in ways their medicine couldn't counter. Infrastructure collapsed as human saboteurs destroyed centuries of development in hours. The exile species, armed with human intelligence and driven by centuries of hatred, showed no more mercy than their human allies. On Zentari Prime, the Galactic Council held its last emergency session. Grand Counselor Thex stood before empty seats, most representatives either dead or fleeing. The few who remained looked at him with expressions of shock and horror. "The humans have broken us," he said simply. "In 6 months, they've accomplished what the Forgotten couldn't do in centuries of war. They've destroyed the Galactic Council." "How?" a Vorthan representative chimed. "They were primitives, barely spacefaring. How could they do this?" "Because we underestimated them," Thex replied. "We saw their limited technology and assumed they were limited beings. We never considered that a species might choose to appear weak, might surrender as a strategy rather than from defeat. We never imagined they would use our own arrogance against us. What do we do now?" Thex looked at the tactical displays showing the full scope of the disaster. Council fleets in retreat or destroyed, member worlds in chaos, economy collapsed, military infrastructure compromised beyond repair, and somewhere in the void, a relativistic weapon moved toward their capital at speeds that mocked their ability to stop it. We survive if we can. We flee if we must. And we pray the humans are satisfied with our destruction. Because if they're not... He trailed off, unwilling to voice the possibility that Humanity might hunt down every last council species in revenge. Back on Earth, President Williams stood in the restored United Nations building. The flags of Earth's nations flew again, freed from alien occupation. But there was no celebration in her eyes, only grim satisfaction. "Madam President," General Harrison reported, "the Shadow Fleet has secured Earth orbit. All Council forces have been eliminated. The bioweapon has achieved 96% effectiveness. Infrastructure sabotage is complete across all targeted worlds." And the exile fleets? "The Forgotten have retaken 17 systems. The Wraith Confederacy has destroyed the Council's rimward fleet. The Savage Moons—" He paused. "They're being thorough in their revenge." Williams nodded. "Send a message to all surviving Council worlds. Tell them Earth is sovereign and will remain so. Any approach to our system will be considered an act of war. Any attempt at retaliation will be met with worse than what they've already experienced." "Do you think they'll listen?" "They'll listen," Williams said coldly. "We've shown them what 6 months of human planning can do. They won't risk what 6 years might bring." She turned to face the assembled leaders of Earth. "We've won our freedom, but at a terrible cost. We've become genocidaires to avoid being slaves. History will judge whether we were right." "We survived," Harrison said simply. "In the end, that's what matters." Williams looked out at the sky, now free of alien warships. The stars beckoned, but differently than before. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as explorers or diplomats, but as the most dangerous species in known space. They had turned defeat into victory through patience, planning, and utter ruthlessness. The Galactic Council had thought they had won. They had taken Earth, broken its defenses, forced its surrender. By every metric of civilized warfare, they had achieved total victory. But humans had never been civilized when their survival was threatened. They had evolved on a death world, survived by being smarter and more vicious than their competitors. When pushed to the brink, they didn't just fight back. They ensured their enemies could never threaten them again. The wrath had descended, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the ruins of Council space, survivors spread warnings about the humans. Don't provoke them. Don't threaten them. Don't even contact them unless you're prepared for the possibility they might see you as a threat. They're not like other species. They don't just win wars. They win them so thoroughly that their enemies cease to exist. And on Earth, humanity began to rebuild. They had paid a terrible price for their freedom, becoming the monsters the universe would whisper about for millennia. But they were free. They were sovereign. And they had sent a message written in the ashes of the Galactic Council. Earth stands alone. Earth stands free. And Earth will never kneel again. The stars still called to them, but now humanity would explore them on their own terms. They had proven themselves the apex predators of the galaxy through cunning, patience, and unlimited capacity for vengeance. The universe would learn to step carefully around the children of Earth, because humans had shown what happened when their wrath descended, and wise species would ensure it never descended on them.